Hi, I'm Andrew with AGL Mechanical Tips, and in this video I'm going to show you how to insulate a couple of commonly used HVAC fittings. I'm not going to go over the basics in this video, so if you want to see the basics, check out my video on insulating round pipe, which I'll put a link in the description below. Or you can check out my video on insulating round pipe elbows. Let's go ahead and get started. At AGL, we believe in working smarter, not harder. So we're going to use assembly line process to insulate all this. We're not just going to do one boot at one time. We're going to make a list of everything that needs to be insulated. We're going to get all our tools in one area. We're going to have our insulation out, ready to cut patterns. And I may even split that assembly line up a little bit where I'm actually just cutting patterns for my boots at one time, then I'm stapling my boots at one time, and then I'm taping my boots at one time. You know, it'll all come together a lot quicker. First fitting we're gonna do today is a straight boot. This is a 6x10x6 straight boot. It is the easiest fitting to insulate. And I could probably do about 10 of these in 20 minutes using assembly line process. Straight boot can be used in a couple of applications. Normally this is used to go through a subfloor or a floor application, and we screw it through here or we tack it. The most important thing about this is whatever screw you're using, you got to make sure that the head kind of sinks so that when the grill goes in, it doesn't hit that screw head. So we normally use like a drywall screw or T25. Normally if the subfloor is, newer construction, we'll just use roofing tacks. And older construction, you'll see that that doesn't really hold too well. This can also be used for a ceiling application. We try to always use a magic boot in a ceiling application, but in some situations, this holds you off the joist a little bit, or it's too big to actually fit in between the joists, and we have to go to this, which we would then add a plaster flange to allow it to be attached to the ceiling. We're gonna start with sealing the seams on our boot here. We wanna make sure that we tape these sheet metal connections here. We wanna tape this gore right here. If we're in conditioned space, it's really not as important because any leakage is leaking into the house, so we probably just use regular duct tape. It's not required. In non-conditioned spaces, we'd use hardcast 1402 or some form of mastic tape, which is similar to applying duct tape and then painting mastic over it. It just is all encompassed in this product here. After we've sealed our fitting, we're gonna go ahead and start cutting patterns for it. I put a mark right here just showing that when I cut my pattern, I'm actually keep it down about a ½ inch. It's into the flooring at this point, so missing this little bit of insulation is no big deal, and you don't have to worry about the defect of insulation curling over if you do this. I'm also gonna stop it right at my bead right here to where it allows me to provide a good flex connection at this point. We could measure these patterns, but it's easy just to set it right here on the insulation pattern. I've already have a 2-inch lip here, and I've slid it about a ½ inch over the edge here, and I'm gonna mark right where my gore is at right there. And I'm just gonna simply roll this fitting. And I'm gonna give myself a little extra just in case I run short. And put a little mark there. And I'm gonna connect these 2 points here. Since we're using assembly line process, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my next, I'm just gonna come to the edge here, I'm gonna mark that. I'm gonna continue this. I'm gonna mark that. Give myself a mark here. So I'm now gonna cut my pattern out. Let's get rid of this. So now I got my pattern cut. We just simply have to staple this here. I'm getting it a little bit tight, but I'm not really torquing down on it. Because I'm doing multiple patterns, I'm gonna go ahead and staple all of these at one time so that I don't have to keep finding the staple gun and then taping and then staple gun and then taping. I'm just gonna get the major portion of my stapling done. All right, now we're going to do some taping. I'm going to rip a piece of tape. I'm going to use my thumb right here to mark right at this corner. I'm going to put this on halfway, and then I'm going to come to my lip here. I'm going to push down tight and fold over to where it's a nice clean strip there. My insulation is about a 1/2 inch back. It's important that you don't overlap your corners. It'll make for a crappy looking fitting. It is okay to have this little area right here exposed. We taped around here, and I went ahead and did all 3 of these boots because this job needs 3 straight boots, and my duct tape's right here, and it's easier for me to just do that assembly line process style rather than setting down the tape, grabbing a staple gun. It's just faster. The next part is to tuck our corners. I'm going to take my hand here, and I'm going to slide it right in between this fiberglass and this vapor barrier, and I'm going to pinch. And I'm gonna tuck this edge like this, pulling it tight, right to there. And I'm gonna put a staple here, a couple staples. And I'm gonna flip this fitting. I'm gonna do the same thing here. Put my hand in. I'm gonna do this 2 more times on my other 2 boots. Now that I've tucked all my corners, it was efficient to do all 3 at one time. Again, I'm beating this assembly line process into your head right now. I'm now just going to tape this, and that would complete the fitting. One thing to discuss when taping it, there's a little defect here where this ends. It just doesn't ever look perfect. A lot of people do a single tape like that. There's nothing wrong with that. I personally prefer a double. It's just a personal preference. I just feel that it looks a little bit better when I go over it like that. Now you can see that defect doesn't really exist anymore. Over here, I'm not going to finish this taping this because when I make an attachment here, I'm going to have a tape seam that goes over here. We discussed this boot going into a floor application, which would be just this going through the floor and getting secured. In a sealing application, we'd apply a plaster flange. I do this after it's insulated. And it's pretty simple. You just take this, slide it over one edge here. You have to kind of fight it a little bit, but I normally get this one side on, and then I'm using a snap lock tool right here. Malco makes this one. I come in here, and I'm putting a snap right there. This tool's a little worn, so it's kind of hard on me, but that's now secured to that boot. And I'm going to use leverage to come down and cover the other side. Normally follow up all the way around just to where I know I've got a secure, something that's not going to break loose here. Now, when you go to attach this to the joist, you're going to actually mark where your joist lies and fold this in on itself. But you want to leave this 90-degree bend here in place because that is strength from this fitting falling down. So if you cut this out completely, this boot's going to sag. That's how you do a plaster flange. Keep in mind, if you don't have a plaster flange on site, we used to frame out all of these boots before these plaster flanges existed in the industry. So you could always just frame out every boot. I don't recommend that. It's a lot of time lost, but if you have one boot to put in, you don't have a plaster flange, that's a solution. More than likely, I'm gonna end up doing another video on plaster flanges, boot clips, properly hanging a boot, and properly putting in a register. Believe it or not, there's a lot that can go wrong there, so it's probably some content that I need to go over. Next fitting we're gonna insulate is the 90-degree boot. Same as the straight boot, it works in a ceiling or a floor application. The difference is it has this 90-degree turn on it. So if you're trying to stay in the joist bay or something, you've got a 90-degree turn that keeps you in the joist bay, or sealant application, same thing. The first thing we're gonna do is measure our length. And with the straight boot, we just simply put this down and we rolled it over. But because of this, you can't get it all the way over. So I'm gonna do it 1, 2, and I'm gonna put my finger there and mark, go 1, 2. I'm gonna give myself a little bit extra here That gives me my length this way. And then to get my length this way, I'm just gonna roll the fitting like that and mark it right at my gore here. So I'll come back over here. I'm holding it 1/2 inch from the end here, rolling it back, marking it at my gore. There's my pattern for my 90-degree boot. So if I had multiple boots to wrap, I would again cut a bunch of patterns and insulate them all at once using the assembly line process. I'm just gonna cut this pattern out here and mark my line there. Got a 2-inch lip. I've got a pattern the length to go around here and the length to go from here to this gore, keeping it 1/2 inch back at this point. Now, let me get this out of the way. Now I'm gonna take this boot and I'm gonna center it up on my pattern. And I'm gonna put a mark right at this corner bend here. Right there, just like that. We come to this side, we're gonna do the same thing, right at this corner bend. And put a mark. And then from there, I'm gonna come about 2 inches back, put a little dash there just for the purposes of this video. I normally wouldn't dash it, but we're gonna connect this point here. We're gonna end up removing this material here. We'll do the same on this side. I'm not marking the end because I know where it's going. I just was doing that for the video. We're gonna remove this material here. Now we're going to staple this pattern right at the end here. I want to note, if I was a little bit long on my pattern, so I just simply I pulled this yellow back a little bit and let it exist here. And then I'm going to curl this side up like this. Curl this side up here. I'm going to hold right here and I'm going to look at where I need to remove yellow. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to put a mark there. And I've made a new seam. I'm now going to staple that. I'm going to go ahead and tape this seam here before I tighten up the back because I'm going to put a lot of tension on my seam when I tighten up the back. I don't want these staples slipping. Now that that's done, I'm going to actually tuck this in. I'm gonna put my hand in between the vapor barrier, separate it. I'm gonna tuck it right down this line, and I'm gonna also tuck it right down this line. Put my hand in between the vapor barrier and the fiberglass, and I'm gonna go back pretty far. Then I'm gonna fold this vapor barrier over. I still got some yellow that got caught up in my fold, so I'm gonna stick my hand back in there and clean that up a bit. You don't have to go crazy tight on this first one because whatever's still loose, you'll get on the next one. I want this to come down as far as possible. Then I'm gonna come to this corner, I'm gonna do the same thing. Putting my hand in between the vapor barrier and the fiberglass. Getting the fold started. I'm stapling it down as far as I can. And then I'm gonna add a tape seam here. I want to tell you that you could actually tape this first, and I normally do, I just didn't this time. But you could go and tape this and then start working on this back portion here. If you don't, you could do it either way, it's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and tape around this now. When I go to tape this section right here, it's up a little bit from the fitting, so I normally push this down right here to give myself a clean, nice right angle here. And then when I strip my tape, I'm actually gonna fold my tape a little bit and tape just this bottom side. And I'm not pushing real hard, I'm just trying to make an even tape there. It just makes it look a little cleaner. Then when I do this side, I like to do a double here because there's a lot of defects around it. The double hides a lot of that. Last part is we're just going to tape this back portion. You could do this with a single. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to trim up right around this gore right here. This will allow us to make a good connection between our flex or our hard pipe, make a good connection here. And then once we've trimmed that up and made a connection, we're going to solid mastic this all the way from here to where this ends up being one solid, clean, whitewashed piece of material. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, and that's how you do a 90-degree boot. Next fitting we're going to insulate is an Endshot boot. And I still to this day don't feel that I've perfected this pattern. It's just never perfect. But where I'm actually going with this one is once you get advanced in insulating these fittings, you need to start learning how to create your own pattern for anything. You know, you're gonna make a weird transition one day and you need to just teach yourself how to properly, you know, see this flat. You know, how could I insulate this properly and make a pattern to do that? With an Endshot boot, every time I insulate an Endshot boot, I feel that I'm doing that again. It's just, I don't use assembly line process on an Endshot boot. It's just too tedious and I'm checking it as I'm doing it. First thing we're gonna do is figure out the total length of our pattern, and then we're gonna make the pattern portion that wraps the throat of this boot here. To do that, I'm gonna, just like a 90-degree boot or a straight boot, I'm gonna start over here. 1, 2, mark it about, 3 inches past or so. That way I know my pattern's long enough. And I'm just gonna remove this material here and get rid of it. I'm gonna take my boot and I'm gonna set it a 1/2 inch past the edge of my pattern here. And then I'm marking right at this corner here, right at the start of my throat. Do it on that side. I'm gonna do a mark here. I can't really get in there to cut it. And I'm just gonna cut a straight line here. Go ahead and put this boot down. I'm gonna staple the insulation pattern for the throat. You notice my wrap's a little long here. I'm just gonna simply take that and tuck it back. Just like that, no big deal. Just a little bit more yellow in one area. Staple it. I'm gonna go ahead and tape all the way around this fitting. That way, when I'm working on this portion of it, this is snug, it's not moving. Pull a piece of tape, use my thumb to give myself a marker. I'm not going all the way over the other end. I'm stopping a little short. Then I put my tape down, I'm gonna do it nice and clean like that, pulling it tight. Pull my insulation a 1/2 inch back. Rip my tape, use my thumb as a marker. Doing the same thing here. Now we're going to work on what I'm going to call the wrapper of the boot. I'm making stuff up as I go here, but this is the wrapper. And I'm going to start marking along this gore right here. You know, so I'm gonna actually put a little mark over here. Camera can't catch it, but there's a mark under the gore right here. And I'm gonna roll this fitting, putting a mark where that gore exists. And when I get all the way to this point, I'm gonna put a mark this way. I'll put a mark right over here. And I'm gonna actually connect this right here. And I'm gonna work on this portion of my fitting, which is just simply rolling it over and putting a mark right there. So that shows that. Now, here's a big part. Don't just cut this out. We're gonna add, well, we can cut this out. So now you got that portion, but we're gonna add a lip here so that we have a staple seam. So I'm gonna cut here, and cut here. Then I'm gonna roll this like that. And then I'm going to just staple down this lip right here. And then right here, I'm going to fold this over, kind of like a present. I'll tuck this in here, or you can cut it out. Probably better if you cut it out, but it's fine either way. Fold that over. Tape that down. And now the defect, or the thing I don't like about my pattern, is this little section here is still exposed. And I've tried to make this strip, and it's worked maybe once, but I've just decided from here on out that I'm just gonna strip this portion in separate. And I just cut that lip off there. And I just cut a little strip of insulation to fit there. This part is extremely important. Anytime you put duct tape down like this, where there's no staples holding the insulation together, you need to add staples. In a hot attic, this tape will get heated up and the adhesion will be affected. It will slip. More than likely the connection you make here will hold it together. It'll probably be okay, but probably isn't good enough. So we're going to staple it like this, and then we're going to put duct tape over these staples, because if any condensation ever forms on this duct, these staples will rust and fail. Now all that's left is to tape these seams up. And if you're off a little bit on the end, in order to make a good connection, cut this nice and straight on the gore. And that is our completed Endshot boot. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel, leave a comment in the comment section. We'll try to put some information in the description below. And remember, quality is your reputation.